How do you feel for you? Because the documentary you did with all the president's men, this is the Sean, as a guy in this documentary, you have Steve Bannon, Kash Patel, right? You have Roger Stone, you have
Tucker,
Giuliani, you have a bunch of Giuliani, Flynn. Okay, you got all these guys where, you know, the media would say, Sean, what are you doing talking to all these conspiracy theorists? You know, they're all, you know, MAGA and all this other stuff, you know, for you, and they went through this. What was it for you going through it as a director at the beginning with the level of skepticism you had when you're hearing about election interference, election for all this other stuff? What did you go personally yourself as a director in evolution from the beginning to the end on Trump, your impression of Trump?
Well, so 2015, 16, I started working for RT America, right? That was in, you know, the DC-based group that had Chris Hedges, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. It had Tom Hartman, a leftist, a progressive guy, Jesse Ventura, Larry King. We had a lot of really interesting journalists, right? And we were a dissident because at that point, as you know, the media is controlled. I've understood this since I was 7 years old, you know, being in JFK, watching the fallout from JFK, seeing the media reaction to JFK, how it was dismissed by the mainstream media. Obviously, some historians got it, but a lot of the mainstream never accepted that narrative, right? They said it's a great film, but it's bad history and it's a conspiracy theory fantasy. So I understood from 7, 8 years old that the media was lying to us. From the first Iraq War, through the Serbian War, through the second Iraq War, I knew all this stuff. I was watching it. You know, I literally would try to tell people. So when I got a chance to work for RT, that was a way of actually having a platform for us dissidents to say things that were not acceptable on ABC, NBC, CNN, right? And they turned that in 2016. They demonized RT America into this Russian propaganda outlet. That was remember when they said that the Russians interfered in the election, half of that report, which was only like 12, 13 pages, was about RT America. That was the Russian interference narrative in the Trump election, was that RT America was pushing stories that they didn't like about fracking or about Syria or whatever it was. And they're saying, we interfered in the election. I'm sitting there going, we're Americans. We have the right to speak it's free speech in this country. We can say what we feel and think, and you know, we're doing journalistic work. So I understood this plot, this idea of the Russia interfering with the election was so thin at that point in 2017 that after the election they released the ICA, you know, focusing on RT America. And I go, where's the Russian collusion narrative? You know, what did the Russians do? Did they hack in our election machines? There's no evidence of them hacking into our election machines to switch votes. So what does that mean to say they interfered in the election? It's one of the CIA kind of words, you know, interference, Russian interference, misinformation. These are all CIA words that they put out there to confuse people. So at that point, I didn't pay attention.
Do you know that because you and your dad always talk about this stuff and you've been curious about this topic, or through investigating it, you're like, this is the CIA words they use, so PSYOP?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a book on the New World Order. It was my college thesis. I did conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura as a host. I did Buzzsaw as a host for many years before RT. So I've been familiar with, you know, history and Untold History of the United States. His docuseries, I worked as an editor for a year on. I contributed ideas, you know, about some of the angles and points for it. So a lot of this is just my background. So again, when I saw the Russian collusion narrative in 2016 for Trump, I liked Trump coming in because I liked the fact that he was an outsider. I thought it was Bush, Clinton, we're stuck in this rigged game. And someone came in who said, hey, Putin, why don't we get along with Putin? You know, we can talk, we can work with them, we can negotiate. I said, good for him. As soon as he said that, the whole Russian narrative starts to boil over in the media, and everyone starts saying, you know, he's a Russian puppet. So I didn't pay attention in 2016 to 2020. I didn't really pay attention to the whole allegations against Papadopoulos and Manafort and Carter Page and Flynn and Roger. Even though I knew Roger, I just didn't pay attention to it because I felt like, okay, this is going to boil over. There's nothing there. If there's anything really there, we'll you know, it'll come out. But this is kind of ridiculous, right? This is years going on, years of this accusations, people like this idiot Schiff, who's now our senator, out there saying there's Russian collusion, and you just got to see it
with a certainty.
Yeah, and
there is proof. There's I don't know what word he used, but saying the fact that we have proof that there was collusion.
Yeah, and it's so embarrassing that this guy he should be like a McCarthy type, right? I mean, he should have been called out and said, you know what, you're an embarrassment. He should not be nowhere near Congress or Senate. And the fact that California elected him, it just shows how brainwashed people are over there, right? It's pretty sad. I mean, McCarthy at least got to a place where he was making accusations and they couldn't back it up, and they basically said, you're done. This guy Schiff now wins Senate. It's disgusting. So Pelosi also would say things like that. It's certain with probability or something. Like, she would say these things where it's like, we know that the Russians probably interfered. They would use these words.
But it worked, though. If you think about it, it worked on so many people.
Yeah.
So, but what did you learn at the end of it? You're spending time. Kash Patel is now got the head of FBI job, right? You're Steve Bannon, who strategically, that guy's brain, the amount of credit he gets on the right for being strategic, he's up there, right?
Yeah.
What they did to most of these guys, now they're in there, right? What was it at the end for you? Did you? I'm assuming you didn't vote for Trump in 2016 or 2020. Is that a fair assessment?
I voted for him in 2020.
You voted
because
for him in
2020 was very obvious what they were doing with the COVID to me.
So when he lost, you voted for him then, and was
well, did he lose?
Well,
I'm a believer that they rigged 2020.
Oh, you're from that camp.
Yeah.
Are you there as well?
I'm in the middle. I don't know, but there was a lot of evidence on Sean's side.
No, I think Rudy had good instincts, but he didn't have the time. He didn't have the. He's not his forte is not. He's going after mafia. He sees the conspiracy, but he's not an election guy. When it comes to election fraud, there are certain ways of presenting, and there's certain evidence. And I think that to this day, we know a lot of these things have been buried. Right? Let's be honest. Whether it was certain districts, and if you can look at it very simply, you think 2020 wasn't a weird thing. Trump got 75 million votes in 2020, right? He won all the bellwethers. He easily won except for the 5 or 6 states, counties that's shut down for the night. And to me, that's, I go back to 2000. I didn't like the 2000 election because I felt like, this is weird. The Chads, right?
Bush.
It all takes is one county to throw a whole state, right? The same if you shut down elections and say we're going to come back tomorrow, and then the next day they get they know exactly how many votes they needed to overcome Trump's lead in those 5-6 states, and that's the problem to me is when you stop counting and then come back the next day and we got just enough to beat that lead. That's suspicious, right? Come on, you got to say that doesn't add up to a logical person to say you would stop counting at any point, stop the observance at any point, and then come back knowing how many points. It's like a football game where they say, we're going to 2 minutes to go, your team's up by 2 touchdowns, we're going to come back tomorrow. And then you come back the next day and you go, yeah, we scored 3 touchdowns last night. Well, I didn't see it. Where was the observers? That's my problem with the 2020 election.
If your friends from 10 years ago who were closest to you hear you say something like that, would they say, yeah, Sean would say something like that?
Sure.
Or do you have anybody from 10 years ago that are like, Sean, stop it?
In 2004, a lot of people suspected that the machines were rigged against Kerry. There was articles written about that in Ohio. It was a very, very controversial state, and because people started questioning the voting machines back then, and many Democrats were the ones questioning it all the way through 2018. We've got video in the Giuliani episode of Kamala and all these people saying, the voting machines right now, I can take you down there and show you how to hack these machines. So why is it in 2020 we couldn't question the voting machines anymore, or the issue of
how much you think this is going to backfire on the Democrats? How
much
much
you think? Did?
Well, I mean, election for sure, but that's one term, right? But do you think this is going to be the types of an event that happened with Barry Goldwater 60-64, where Democrats, Republicans lost the African-American vote for decades, and from 64% of African Americans voted Democrat.
Yeah.
The rest were conservative or independent. 4 years later, it went from 60 to 92% voting Democrat. And they got the black vote for 60 years. Do you think this was so monumental that Democrats may have had a blow to them that could last decades, or you think it's just one term?
I think Trump has the opportunity to create an historic presidency. I mean, the people around him, like we talk about Tulsi Gabbard in our series, you talk about Kash Patel, you talk about Bobby Kennedy, and many others that are solid people with good instincts, right? That could transform they could fundamentally drain the swamp. Now, it's not going to be easy, but if they create the cultural shift, and I think it's there, a lot of people, that's why the red wave came in a way that even the popular vote won. People are sick of this system, right? But the elections are key to me, and it's not about Trump versus Kamala or anybody. If we don't have a clear, like a blockchain style of transparency when it comes to elections, that's what scares me the most, is that, we get to this place where, you can rig machines, where you don't, where you stop counting and say, we'll come back tomorrow. We need to get a clear way of doing an election where it's like a blockchain where you can see the results. Because I think there is suspicion, by the way, around some of the down ballot votes this year, to this day in some of the states that, there are questions. I think if you can have blockchain transparency, right, where it's like every vote is there, it's accounted for, you can go and you can check your vote and you can see where that's what we need to have as a modern society, and all done in one day, not over the course of a week or 3 months of voting. I mean, it's just got to be really clear and simple.
You know who doesn't want that? Democrats don't.
Oh, I know.
Want
that. I'm saying, but now is the time to change it. If we don't change it,
right.
I'm very concerned about our freedom as a.
Sean, would you consider yourself an independent or libertarian?
I'm independent. I don't fall into any category. I consider myself a constitutional Republican. I like the Constitution of the United States being a limited republic, being a limited federal government.
You're a constitutional Republican.
Yes.
And Oliver, what would you say you are? Independent?
Now, with the world shifting as it is, I'm certainly independent, but I'm leaning back like my father to the Republican side because I'm disgusted with the Democrats and their constant attack. Actually, it's all their extremism of their attacks on Trump that have turned me off. The extremism of their attacks,
such as.
Constant. What are you talking about? Everything he said was.
I've seen it.
In the newspapers, they say falsely. He falsely says, or they constantly give him an adjective, which is unfair. In other words, there's nothing objective written about him. And I saw Sean's documentary. It's wonderful, actually. One of the most affecting chapters is the one on Giuliani, who I did not like. Giuliani had reached that place because of his rah-rah patriotism in 2001. I thought it was disgusting. He was overboard. I really did. When he was most popular is when I hated him, because I thought he was taking advantage of this thing. He was no longer a prosecutor. He was an opportunist. And what happened was that he actually makes sense in this documentary. His whole position makes sense. He explains himself. And it turned me around. I said, I understand him. And now the newspapers are attacking him constantly like some kind of fraud. That's when I appreciate what he went through. You understand? It's like I'm a contrarian, I guess you could say. But it's good to have contrarians in our society. We need them. And I admire Sean, who is my son, who's done this on his own. I have nothing to do with his thinking. He's read his own books. He's formed his own conclusions. I was very impressed with what he just said. He explained these elections in a very clear, logical way to me. And frankly, we've been interfering in Russia so many times. I mean, Hillary Clinton is known for that 2006 period, the 2014 election. They were all over Russia. And here we never judge ourselves. We always say that's the other side is doing this.
We're known to rig elections. Like, it's known the CIA has rigged elections abroad, right? We know that for a fact. So it's so hard. Why is it so difficult for us to fathom the CIA having rigged elections abroad?
Why can't you do
could
it
be
here?
involved. Yeah. And it's the same chicken come home to roost
Which raises,
concept,
of course, the assassination attempts on Trump. I don't know, man. It's so strange.
What do you think about it? Is there a part of you that's skeptical
you have to be disturbed by it, and there's still time to go, Look at all the damage that Biden administration is doing to Trump right now. I mean, they're putting him in the spot. The problem is that they know Trump is a hothead and might. I think he's smarter now. I think he's a little bit, but he's got to consider this as a threat to him. They want him to go to. They want to go to war or some kind of war. They trap him.
You're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but the last 13 and a half years, I've been working on my first fiction book to write ever. Fiction book to write. And while I finished this book a year ago, I got the strangest phone call about one of the characters in the book where the guy wanted to meet with me and he read the book. And afterwards is like, wait a minute, am I the villain in the book? This is a story about a character named Asher, who is half Armenian, half Assyrian, whose father was involved in the Iranian Revolution, linked to Savak, working with the Shah, that they escape and he gets recruited to a secret society. When you go to the secret society, it's been around for a couple thousand years. They've developed some of the craziest leaders of all time. And they test you. There's unique tests that they have at the society where they test to see your emotional mental toughness. One of the tests that they have is very rigorous. It's purely mental. Of course, there's a physical one, but one is mental and emotional. If you're Armenian, if you're Syrian, if you're Persian, this is a book you're going to be reading and saying, holy moly, this is the kind of stuff you talk about in here? Yes. If you're somebody that's fascinated by history, this is a book for you. Characters. There's a technology that this society, secret society, builds where you go into a vault. I won't spoil it for you. When you go down, they have a technology where you get to sit down and watch and have a 3-4 hour conversation with Tupac. You can set up a debate between Karl Marx and Ayn Rand. Karl Marx is in the book, who wrote Communist Manifesto. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, is in the book. Marilyn Monroe explains the concept of seduction and sex in the book. When you read the book, it's about development of the next leaders in the world and how they do it and how they've been doing it for many years. And it's also about how to prevent the end of civilization and how this organization goes about doing it. So, I've never written a parenting book before, but if I ever wrote a parenting book, this is the closest thing to it because it's all mindset, a lot of crazy stories. Again, 13 and a half years. Trust me, I told myself I will not publish this book until I sell my insurance company and I'm fully disconnected from it, where it's no longer my responsibility 100%. When you read this, if you're a creative person, if you like fiction books, if you enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, or if you enjoy Divergent, if you like books like that, I think you're gonna enjoy reading this book. It's the creative side. Business books is very easy. Here's how you do it. Here's how this how it works. This is very creative. If you haven't placed the order yet, now you can order it on Simon & Schuster, Amazon. I'm gonna put the link up below somewhere here, maybe even in my profile. Go order the book and read it. I've never written a book where I can't wait to read your reviews to see what you think about this book. So I'm going on this wild journey and we have some plans with this book here. If you support the things that I work on, I would appreciate you going and reading the book, order the book on Amazon, and then post a review. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.